We get two views from society. Just get bigger muscles, and all of that will solve all your problems. Or don't be a man because everything you're doing is evil. Are either of those really good options for men out there? If you're a man listening or watching this right now, is that what you want?
Today we have Josh Tomeoni,
a men's coach who has spent years guiding men through divorce, codependency,
and the deeper work of becoming grounded, accountable, and emotionally strong.
Somebody that would call themselves a feminist is really just wanting healthy masculine energy in their life. But what society has taught them is that masculine energy is negative and toxic and evil. So because of that, society has told men to not live out their masculine energy. You cannot fight toxic masculinity with femininity. Read history. It's just never worked. You fight toxic masculinity with healthy masculinity.
Where should somebody start to get in touch with that healthy masculine? What is an action that one of our listeners can do that can get that mobilized?
Be very intentional with what you put here. What are you watching? What are you reading? And what is that convincing you of? Because we all have propaganda coming into our head at all times, and it's affecting us all more than we realize. There's a Harvard study several years ago that 90% of the success they had in life was just because of the 5 people they had that surrounded themselves. Look at those relationships objectively. That's really key here. Do not convince yourself that you're ready for dating. I interviewed a couple dozen people that have all gone through divorces and everything else. You know what the number one thing that everybody said was?
Hello and welcome back to the Men's Therapy Podcast. I'm your host, Marc Azoulay, and I'm here with Josh Tomeoni. He is a men's coach. He focuses on divorce, and he is the host of the Derelict podcast. I was recently interviewed on his show, and I'm excited to change roles and get to be on the other side of the table. Josh, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks for having me, man. I've been excited about doing this for a while. I know we were scheduled to do it another time, and it got rescheduled, so I've been looking forward to it for weeks.
Yeah, so let's start with the personal story. Like, what got you into doing men's work and wanting to help all the guys out there?
I've been helping and coaching. Well, let me just start at the very beginning. I'm not going to make this a really long story, so don't worry if you're listening. But this is what I thought about when I decided that I wanted to start working with men specifically. I realized that one of the first memories I ever had, probably the first memory that I've ever had, was when I was in preschool. So I was probably 3 to 5, I would guess. I'm not sure the exact age. And I just remember there was this little dude that was in preschool with me. I don't remember his name or anything else. I just remember that he always kind of felt left out, and all the other boys weren't playing with him and that sort of thing. And I remember at this very young age still grabbing him and just being like, hey, let's play. Let's go have some fun. It's all good. You're going to be good, etc. That was my first memory. And it's been true for me my entire life. I've mentored guys. I've coached guys through various different ways, I should say, through church for a long time, through 12-step as a sponsor, through just individual friends and that sort of thing that I had. So really the big revelation of, hey, I think this is your mission in life actually came, it was actually about a year ago. I was about to turn 40 as of the time of this recording. So I'm about to turn 41 here pretty soon. And I was about to turn 40, and the question I asked myself is I said, look, what do you want to be doing when you are 50? And the mission that just kept coming out was this little boy who just needed help, right? And obviously now working with a lot of men that I've been working with, again, for years, but I just made it more official and added a business model around it about a year ago, is that there's a lot of men that go through a lot of difficult things. I'm sure we'll talk about that on the podcast as well, a lot of different transitions in their life. One that was really painful and difficult for me was a divorce. And I went through that process, and I saw how important it was for me to have coaches and therapists and that sort of thing through that. That's where I met a really great therapist that I had for years. So I'm a huge fan of therapy as well. And maybe we'll talk about kind of the difference between therapy and coaching, because a lot of people, I think, wonder what the difference is. And it was really through that experience where I realized, wow, just having somebody that could coach me through these things just made a world of difference. So I've been on that, ever since.
You mentioned a lot of good threads to pull on there. I want to bring it back to you to begin with. We talk a lot about masculinity, of course, on the show. And I'm wondering, what was your view of masculinity growing up? Because when you talk about helping that kid, that's awesome. And I think that's what we hope to instill in guys now. But I find it so rare. I mean, when I was growing up, a lot of guys, we were kind of always against each other. There was this kind of, competition, and we didn't really want to help, especially the ones in need, because that would be weak. So I'm curious, like, where that came from and what you learned about, being a man and being a boy when you were young.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it's a little unrelated to the story, to be honest with you, because most of my growing up years, it was more kind of the macho masculinity, not necessarily that my dad was a weightlifting bodybuilder or anything. It was more of just just figure it out. Like pick yourself back up, do it again. Pick yourself back up, do it again. Kind of ignore your emotions, to be honest. Don't worry about those. You're a dude, so you just got to go get shit done. Just go get it done. It's not, oh, we can't sit around and talk about our feelings. We can't work. So maybe one way to answer that question, Mark, actually is with what you do. And I learned growing up that therapy was a complete waste of time. That no man would ever go to therapy because maybe that's women's stuff. But no man needs to do that. If you're a strong man, you just do stuff. So that's really how I grew up. And this is not a talk against my parents or family members, etc. I actually had a really good childhood for the most part growing up. But it was still that idea of you just have to figure it out yourself. That you don't need to like go sit around and talk about your emotions or talk about what you're going through, etc. because that was just a complete waste of time.
Yeah, so I think a lot of guys end up feeling really lonely in that, right? Because we're not talking to each other, we're not being real with each other. We don't actually know what is going on. And as we're struggling as teenagers, right? Like we think we're the only ones that are struggling, right? We think that we're pussies or that we're weak or we're losers or whatever it is.
Absolutely. Or it's just that the men that we're surrounding ourselves. So let me give you an example. I was talking to a man the other day that I was helping him coach through some things, and he just basically decided to give up alcohol not that long ago. And one of the things that he's realizing is that all of his buddies that he was going out to the bar with every week weren't really buddies. They were just guys that wanted him to drink. And the moment that he stopped drinking, he didn't have anything in common with them, because what he realized is that even though he would go to the bar and he would spend hours and hours and hours and hours with these guys, he really knew very little about their life. Like maybe they were talking about sports, maybe they were talking about whatever relationship thing was going on, but not very deep, not very impactful. And when he really wanted to level up his life, he looked at the closest people around him and he's like, I don't know how these guys are actually helping me get to the next level. So he wouldn't necessarily have called himself an out of control alcoholic, which is why he stopped drinking, but he decided to stop drinking because he's like, look, I want guys that like will actually push me, but are okay with having emotion, are okay with actually dealing with the shit that we're dealing with. Cause it's difficult stuff, man, especially when you talk about things like divorce. And I'm sure you'll get into this just as a therapist. That's really hard stuff to go through. And I know in my life, when I've ignored that, let's say it's a grief process that I have to deal with and I ignore it, man, it just comes back stronger. Every single time I ignore it, it just comes back with a vengeance. So I'm still in the process of learning, how do I deal with these difficult emotions, these difficult feelings, these difficult transitions in my life while giving them their due credit and making sure that I'm actually open and honest about what's going on, but also not letting them define me. Right? I don't want to be in a victim support group for the rest of my life. I don't want to define myself as a victim. Not, again, some victim support groups are great, but part of the problem I see with a lot of people, and I'm sure you see this with therapy as well, is like if somebody's going to therapy for 30 years and they're still working on the same problem, why are they going?
100%. I think my industry, it fails a lot of men, right? I think for a lot of those reasons you're pointing out, right? Like a lot of therapists, like we call them like validation therapists, right? They say, oh my God, it's so hard. Your life is so difficult. Like, it's okay that you were an asshole to your wife. Like, it's because of your trauma. Like they train men to be victims and they give them these tools that I think a lot of men end up weaponizing in their relationships, right? It's all insight and there's no action. Whereas I think men need challenge and they need to be confronted and they need accountability in order to grow. Like masculine love looks a lot different than feminine nurturing and holding.
So I heard somebody say this the other day and I stole it for my own, and I don't remember who it was, so I apologize for whoever I'm quoting right now. But what they said is masculine energy grows with competition and feminine energy grows with compliments. And I found that to be true in my life. I know that if my daughters are having a hard time, I need to encourage them, compliment them, love on them, support them. If my son's having a hard time, I usually have to challenge him. Be like, look, do this, etc. And that doesn't mean saying that his feelings are invalid whatsoever. Like, let me give you an example. He was really, really tired last night. He had this paper that he's been putting off making. He's in middle school. And he was asking, he's like, oh, can I just, not go to wrestling tonight? Because it's like this pre-wrestling thing. The true season hasn't started yet. He's like, no, I need to work on my paper. I was like, okay, whose responsibility it is that your paper is due tomorrow that you haven't worked on it yet? It's yours. So why would I let you not go to wrestling when it's your reason for not if you have to stay up late, if you have to wake up early, that is your consequence. So you're going to go to wrestling and then you're going to finish your paper. And guess what? He stepped up, bro. He wrote like twice as much of the paper last night, and he wrote the last 2 sentences this morning, and I was so proud of him. But it was only because of the fact that he was challenged and he wasn't just let off the hook like, oh, no, it's okay. We know life can be difficult. No, it doesn't work with guys. It just doesn't.
Yeah, he wasn't coddled, right? I mean, I have a similar quote, which is like, for men, you got to pick the weeds, and for women, you have to water the flowers, right? Like as men, we really want to know about the barriers and the things that are getting in our way of growth. And then we can kill them because I think we are ultimately hunters, right? And then as women, like you said, you got to just like encourage the behavior that is good. And then it grows more naturally that way. I'm curious. So you mentioned that you're in recovery and that you're doing a lot of this work in recovery. Can you say a little bit about that story? Because when we talk about like bearing emotions, I think that's the way most guys do it, is with some kind of substance, or porn or gambling or what have you.
For sure. I'm happy to chat about that. Before I do, though, I just want to make one point just for the audience, just to clarify. And that is, I think that one thing that's important about that quote about masculine challenge, feminine compliments, is it's talking about masculine, feminine. It's not talking about men and women. So there's a distinction there, right? We all have, as you are well aware, obviously, Marc, we all have masculine and feminine energy. Every single human on the planet has both. Now, there's been a lot of studies done about the fact that most men have most masculine energy, most women have most feminine energy, but that doesn't mean I don't have the other. So what that also doesn't mean is it doesn't mean that challenging men 100% of the time is going to work either. Because if somebody is in, maybe you can speak to this more as a therapist, but I know that if somebody is in like a depressive state and they're just thinking that the whole world is against them and that maybe they're suicidal or something really, really serious like that, challenging them is not necessarily the best move in that market, because they might already feel so challenged that they feel overwhelmed, like they can't do anything, right? So I just want to clarify that that's not always the answer, but I think in general, it makes a lot of sense. You have any comments on that before I answer your other question?
Oh, for sure. I can talk about that. I mean, the way I look at it is I think for, dudes, we go from like villain to victim to hero to guide is the way I look. And I think when people are in that villain state, which could be depression, it could be, God forbid they like struck their wife or their kid, it could be they lost their job, maybe they had an affair. They come in as the villain, right? And then becoming a victim is the next step, right? Being like, okay, you're not evil. Like, here's some reasons why: childhood trauma, abuse, neglect, whatever you want to call it, right? Cognitive distortions. But then, which I think you're talking about, is like, you got to go from victim to hero. You can't stop at victim, right? And then ultimately from hero to guide. And I do think my industry stops at victim a lot of the time, and doesn't help them, challenge them to become heroes, which is ultimately the goal, right? Is to become a better man overall.
So the other thing is your question, you asked about 12-step. And here's my experience of 12-step. So I have a couple really strong opinions about 12-step. I've been in 12-step groups for 6.5 years now or so. Gone through the 12 steps multiple times. And there's a couple things that I want to talk about as far as 12-step goes. Number one is that most people think of it as I'm addicted to drugs or I'm addicted to alcohol. That's what most people think of. I'm an alcoholic or I'm a drug addict. I'm a bum on the street that is so addicted to meth that I literally can't function. Like, that's, I think, what a lot of people think of when they think of addicts. But I'm going to challenge that misperception here for a moment. And I would say that we all have an area in our life, everyone, I'm including everyone, we all have an area of life where we have addictive tendencies for sure. So maybe for some people it could be gambling, right? It could be overeating. Maybe I'm feeling uncomfortable emotions, so I just want to eat the pain away. It could even be things like exercise, which is generally a good addiction to have, right? But maybe you're so focused on exercise in your body that you disregard everybody else in your life. It could be shopping. It could be work. Work is a big one in America that a lot of people don't like to talk about. Oh, no, it's good that I'm addicted to work. Is it? Is that why you're divorced 6 times and your kids won't talk to you? Maybe. I don't know. Maybe something to think about. It could be another really big one in this world, which is more where we can talk more about my story, is that I am recovering from codependency and love addiction. Those are my big ones. So me going to any lengths to try to make sure that my romantic partner is okay with whatever's going on so I feel better about myself. That's basically my definition of codependency. Or just being so in love, romantic, like into everything, which, might surprise you. I got the beard. I'm a pretty masculine dude, but but it still happens where, our entire society, movies, TV, music, disagree with me if you want, our entire society is codependent and love addictive. All of it. Listen to any song, watch any show. It's always somebody's trying to, a good example is the typical sitcom with the typical dad that is basically a loser that just does whatever his wife wants him to do, never puts up any fight because he just wants to keep peace and he just wants the family to be okay, and he's a goofball and everybody just kind of laughs at him. Like, that's not a masculine man as far as I'm concerned. That's a very codependent, love addictive, I don't have any opinions, I can't do anything myself sort of man. That's awful. That's not what I want to be. But that's what I've struggled with in the past. I struggle with it in my marriage. I've struggled with it in other relationships. I've struggled with it in business, just wanting people to like me, wanting people to be okay with me, wanting everybody to love me, not wanting anybody to be upset with me, all that sort of stuff. So coming back to 12-step, that's actually why I got into 12-step. It wasn't kind of the traditional route that a lot of people think of drugs or alcohol. Now here, let me talk a little bit about 12-step. I firmly believe that anyone on the planet could benefit from 12-step. And here's the reason why. There's a couple reasons. Number one, and this is actually something my therapist told me back in the day who got me involved in 12-step. He said, 12-step will teach you how to have healthy relationships. Now, I never thought I would enter a 12-step program, an addiction program for relationships, right? Like, I thought it was to get rid of addictive tendencies in my life. But it's really true. You walk into a 12-step meeting, you share what's going on in your life, and everybody just thanks you. They're not allowed to argue with you. They're not allowed to really say anything. They're just supposed to support you in whatever it is you're trying to say. So it really taught me how to listen to people. It taught me how to shut my mouth when it wasn't my turn. And it taught me to be brutally honest, knowing that whatever I shared in that room wasn't leaving that room. So I would say that was a big thing. Let me just kind of walk through the 12 steps for all your listeners, because I think that this will help everybody realize that this is for everybody. I'm going to summarize this very, very briefly. And by the way, if anybody wants a really good example that's also funny of 12 steps, and I can send you the link later if you want, Mark, but Russell Brand, the comedian, he went through 12-step because he had a lot of addictive issues in his life. And in his autobiography, he did an explanation of the 12 steps that's just the funniest thing ever. So look it up. I'm not sure if it's on YouTube, but I can send a link later. But here's basically a 12-step. The 12 steps is, I'm out of control. I'm powerless over something. Like, I can't figure this out myself. I've been trying to do something. I can't do it anymore. I need something else to help me. I need something that's higher than me, some sort of higher power, God, universe, whatever you want to call it. I need something to help me, and then I need to be able to let it help me. And then after I let it help me, I have to do a deep dive into myself to realize, like, well, what's on my side of the street? What have I done wrong? What are some defects of character that I'm looking at that I'm like, oh man, I haven't really owned this in my life. And then once I figure out what that is, I need to share those with somebody that's trusted, that loves me, that is actually willing to listen to me about that. And then once I do that, oh man, I got to go figure out, like, are there any wrongs I've ever done in my life to anybody? And these are not apologies. These are just like, I need to go admit to somebody, like, I did something wrong, man. I just did. And I need to lay it in front of them, as long as it doesn't hurt them to do that. And then what I need to do is I need to get connected to my higher power, my God, my universe, and do that every single day. And then just to continue to tell people about it. That's the entire 12 steps in a nutshell. So anyone listening, or you tell me, who does that not apply to? That applies to everybody. I think it's very universal.
I think it applies to everybody. I'm also in recovery, and I say the same thing. Like, I think anyone can benefit from the 12 steps. And it's helpful just to, like, do a lot of those audits. I know you've mentioned it a couple ways so far during the show, of like auditing your relationships, auditing your behavior, auditing your, mental psyche. I think as men, we really need mirrors because I don't think we get a clear mirror often. And it can be painful at first, but I think we're really hungry for that clear kind of like feedback loop.
Yeah, and God forbid we're getting that from society. Because from my experience, one of the reasons that I'm so passionate about what I do, and maybe this is true for you too, is that we get two, I think we get two views from society. We get this kind of macho man view. Just go on social media and you will see people just work out, right? Just get bigger muscles. And all of that will solve all your problems, right? There's either that one, or the second one is, well, don't be a man because everything you're doing is evil. It's toxic, it's chauvinistic. You know, I'm coming from a middle-aged, successful white guy, right? Like, I'm the problem. I already know that I'm the problem just for being born this way. And I don't know, are either of those really good options for men out there? Like, if you're a man listening or watching this right now, is that what you want? Do you just want to be like the macho guy where, like, as long as you're working out, everything's fine? Like, that doesn't change your life. Or do you want to be the one that's just in the wrong at all times just because you're trying to actually live out your masculine energy? I don't want either one of those. There is good things about working out. I work out every single day. I'm not against it. I'm just saying that's not the only thing that will change your mind. It's not the only thing that will change your mentality or your spirituality or anything else. And I get so tired of seeing these people on social media, these guys being like, oh, just get buffer and everything will be fine. It's bullshit. I've met a lot of guys that are super buff that are a fucking disaster. They're just a mess.
Yeah. So let me ask you this, like, how would you define modern masculinity? Because I agree. I think there's a lot of men that are lost. I think there's a lot of men that like are pissed off about that, right? A lot of men that are like kind of disaffected and feel, you know, either that they don't fit in anymore or that they're not wanted, you know, and there's a lot of guys that are, I think, isolating right now. There's a lot of guys that are really, really alone. So what would you say a modern masculinity is? Like, what is that third option?
I think a lot of it comes back down to what we were talking about before with challenge. I think that to be a man, you have to face challenge. You have to face your fears. I think that's incredibly important. And by the way, let's talk about courage for a second. You can't be courageous if you're not scared. It's impossible, right? If I don't have any fear over something, then it doesn't take any courage to do it. If something is really easy for me, there's no courage there. So we have to have courage. You know, a lot of it, I think actually, these are probably universal. They apply to women as well. But Richard Schwartz, who I'm sure you're probably familiar with, did a bit about the 8 C's. And again, if you want me to send you a link, you can include it for your listeners too. I think it's really fascinating because he basically says if you're living, in these 8 C's, then you're living in your true self. And it's things like confidence, clarity, courage, and there's, 5 more. And I think those really apply to everybody, but especially to men. So going back to your question, I get this question a lot of like, well, what is masculinity? What is a man? And I don't know. I don't think I'm the expert to answer that question because I think it's different for everybody. But I have seen some universal truths. And that is, number one, men have to be courageous. They have to step up. They have to actually go in with the challenge, step up to the challenge and do it, face our fears and actually accomplish things. Because if we don't, we have society telling us not to do that because that sort of manliness is toxic or it's rude or it's chauvinistic or you're just pushing people over. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm not saying shove somebody down on the street, hit their head against the curb. I'm not talking about that. That's not the sort of challenge and confidence I'm talking about. I'm talking about the fears that we all have. The fears I had when I started my podcast, the fears you probably had when you started your podcast, the fears I've had every single new business that I've ever started, the fears I have as a parent, the fears about the fact that I feel like I'm just going to screw up my kids no matter what I try to do. And they're going to be coming to see you, Marc, at some point in the future with all these scars, right? Like I have all these fears that I have to deal with all the time. But I think a piece that's missing within that, especially when you look at social media. So there's plenty of guys on social media that are all about challenge and that are all about confidence and that are all about, just get up and do it again. But one of the 8 C's that I don't see in a lot of them is calm. I don't see a lot of these men doing it in, let's say, more of a martial arts sort of way. So I'm not a martial arts practitioner, but I have plenty of friends and connections that do. And one of the things that I see within all of them, the higher you get in martial arts, the more dangerous you become. And the more dangerous you become, the more you need to learn how to control that and be calm. And all the most amazing martial artists I know at the top of that spectrum are calm. They're not doing it because they're just doing it out of rage or out of anger or anything else. So I think a calmness going along with the confidence and being courageous to do what we need to do, be courageous to stand up. Like if you don't like what's going on right now in social media or on the planet or in politics or religion or whatever, have the balls to stand up and speak about it. And that doesn't mean denigrating everybody else that you disagree with. It means be open to your opinions. Don't be that guy on the TV show that never stands up to anybody and just drinks his beer while he's watching football all day long because he doesn't even have the confidence to be able to bring his true self into the picture. And I think from my experience, there's a lot of, especially young men right now that are really struggling with this, and they will follow a man that's masculine, but then will get on social media and just be angry and fiery and frustrated. We all know who we're talking about. I'm not going to mention any names here because I don't want your podcast to get cut or anything. But there's plenty of guys that do this. And they'll listen to that guy, even when that guy says, hey, go have sex with as many women as possible and go just like it's every man for himself. So just beat up everybody other. They will listen to all that toxic bullshit because of the fact that they're so desperately seeking a man that will just stand up and have some confidence and courage. At least that's been my experience. I don't know. What about you?
No, I agree with that. I mean, I think, so our definition of modern masculinity here is strength, courage, mastery, and honor. So we kind of have those four pillars together. But yeah, like I think men are really, really needy for male role models. And when you talk about that disaffected man, like the Putz man, right, or the Homer Simpson or whatever, right? It's like a lot of our dads were that. And you know, there's all the guys I end up working with, you know, that end up post-divorce or losing their kids or whatever, lose their job, they come into therapy. And I guess I'm curious for you, like, how do we reach them? Because those are the guys I think we need to reach, right? Like the young men, they're hungry for it, but there's this whole subset of guys that are completely checked out. And that's really what concerns me because we need leaders. You know, we need more adults in the room.
I agree. Let's also relate Homer Simpson to, I don't know if you've seen the show F is for Family. Bill Burr did it on Netflix.
No,
if you haven't seen it, go watch it. It's a hilarious show. But he does it all about his growing up. And if you know anything about Bill Burr, he's like a pretty intense guy when he's speaking, right? And his comedy and everything else, he doesn't really hold back, which is great. That's why I love him. But he shows a picture of him growing up with his dad. And instead of his dad being like Homer, his dad was the guy that just got home and yelled at everybody and was mad all the time at everybody, right? That kind of toxic, quote unquote, image that we have. So we have those two images. We have the one that has no balls, that can't have any sort of opinions, that doesn't do anything, that's just a complete doofus. And then we have the other guy that just comes in screaming and yelling and hitting. And then what's in between? So I agree with you. We do need to figure out, well, how do we reach those people? Well, I think that those guys are experiencing the same thing in their life. And I think that those men, what they're experiencing is they're experiencing a life where they don't feel like or think, maybe I don't want to use the word feel because the angry guy might get mad at me for that. They don't think that in their life they can show them their true selves. They don't think they can show their true masculinity in their home, in their work, in their job, wherever. So because of that, it comes out one of two ways, either a defeatist attitude. I should do this one because this is Homer, right? A defeatist attitude of I'm just going to go to work and eat donuts and watch TV and be a goofball. Or this side of I'm just going to be mad at everybody for my own problems and for all the own shit that I'm going through. So how do we reach those guys? I think it's the same way. It's to tell them that the way that they were designed, the way that they were created, the way that they were born, the way that they exploded into the universe, whatever they believe as far as how they made it here onto this planet, was perfect in the sense of their true masculine selves. And somewhere along the way, it's gotten clipped off from other things. Some people might call it trauma. Some people might just call it the life that they're focusing on, right? We don't experience life. We experience the life we focus on. So if we're focusing on all the shit that happened to us all the time, then that's how we're going to react. We're going to either shut down or we're going to just get mad at everybody. But if we start focusing on, well, what's beautiful about my life? What am I grateful for? How can I really actually serve and help other people? How is this not just all about me? I think that's universal. from my experience.
Yeah, I agree, right? I think, look, we need a masculine vision. We need a return to that, or an evolution of that, maybe is even a better word, right? Because, when you look at those two people, right, you have like the angry dude, Bill Burr's dad, right? Like that version of masculinity, toxic masculinity, whatever. It's like, it's fragile because it's anti-feminine, right? They like looked at women, like everything that a woman does, we're going to do the opposite, which is like very fragile because there's no substance to it, right? And then the Homer Simpson, they looked at that
And
guy.
before you go on to just with Bill Burr's dad, I'm going to also say that's also anti-masculine.
Yes.
Because that's not true masculinity. So that's actually anti-masculine. So some guy that's acting like that's just yelling at everybody and telling them they're all shitheads, that is not masculine. That is anti-masculine as well.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that's right. Like it's very fragile because it doesn't have a core, right? And it's anti-masculine because, like you said, it doesn't have that calm element. There's no control there. There's no mastery, right? From kind of the pillars that we use, right? It's just like a wild emotion. And those guys will be the first to be like, oh, I hate emotions. Emotions are for pussies. Emotions are for women. And they're the most emotional, fragile, afraid people that you can meet, right? They're always in their emotion, right? When they're coming home and they're pissed all the time and they're ruled by anger.
And I think you're bringing up a really good point too, because let's also go to society in which emotions are acceptable for men and women, right? So when they say something like, oh, it's a pussy to be emotional, well, that because what they're saying is, well, I can't be sad as a man. I can't have grief as a man. I can't be insecure as a man. Those are emotions that are unacceptable in our society. Can women have those? Yes. But a woman can't be angry, not in our society. A man can. So the man, like you said, they're just as they're probably more emotional than most people, but they just think that those specific emotions are ones that they're not allowed to feel. But again, we've talked about this already. We already talked about this when it comes to the victim support group or the person that's in therapy for 30 years for the exact same issue. This does not mean that we're sitting in our emotions all day long. It does not mean that I go through a difficult experience and I'm just sitting around grieving for the rest of my life. Not at all. But I need to experience that grief and I need to accept those emotions to come into me, to come out of me, to deal with them so that I can have the courage and confidence to move on to the next thing in my life. Because otherwise, if I don't do that, I turn into either Homer or Bill Burr's dad.
If we can't confront those demons, then we can't like master them and learn how to use them, right? When
I love
God
that.
asks me like, what masculine emotion?
Mastery. That's so true.
Yeah, right. Like I tell them to look at like Martin Luther King, right, or Winston Churchill or Nelson Mandela, and look at some of their speeches, and those are like very emotionally potent and powerful men, right? They're using emotions to move other men. They're using emotions to change the course of history. They're using emotions to like rally the troops, right? I mean, men have been leveraging emotions in a really powerful way forever, but it does take that level of like mastery, of calmness, of being able to like face the demon, and then you could tame it, right? And then you really become powerful in like a very different way, right? Some much more emotionally grounded power rather than like the wild animal savage Bill Burr's dad power.
You just reminded me of a story that I haven't actually thought of for a long time. So when I was in college, so this was 20 years ago. I feel old saying that. I was in college 20 years ago and I was in a communication class and it was all about public speaking. And the guy was just a genius. He'd been a teacher for a long time. Everybody loved his class. His class was always the biggest class on campus. He was just master at his field. And he was probably, God, he probably was 70 by the time I took the class. Like he just was the master. And I'll never forget this one class that we had. Maybe it was multiple. He had us watch a speech from MLK, I believe it was I Have a Dream, and a speech from Hitler, both of them. And then he had us compare them. Both of them as orators are very similar. The speeches are very similar. Go watch both of them. You'll see. The speeches are very similar. The oration is very similar. The emotion that they produce is very similar. It's all very similar. But most people in the world would say that one of those people used it for good and one of those people used it for evil. Not everybody. Maybe some people disagree with that, but most people would agree with that statement, right? But both of them, even though most people would agree that Hitler used that for evil, he still was using his masculine energy in oration in order to provide emotion. Now, I don't believe in what he did. Neither do most people that you talk to. Obviously, it was horrific. I'm not saying that it was good at all. I hope you're not clipping this on social media saying that I'm like loving Hitler now, because that's not my point. My point, though, is that both of them were using their masculine energy to do that, one for good, one for evil. So I think when we talk about like how this masculine energy comes out, I think honestly, the bottom line, like you're talking about with mastery, the bottom line is, what is the purpose? Why? Why is this coming out? What is the point of this energy? For MLK, it was like, man, I got a lot of brothers and sisters that are getting treated like shit. And I need to do my best to try to rally the troops. And for Hitler, it was like, I think all these people are shit and I need to rally the troops to kill them, right? But same thing was happening. So for me, I'm very, very hesitant calling any man toxic at all. I think the term toxic masculinity is complete and utter bullshit. I don't think there's such a thing. What I think it is I think there are toxic actions that people take, femininity, masculinity, whatever, but there's no such thing as toxic masculinity. Masculinity is pure and good and perfect if you're living in true masculinity. So the only thing that happens is that people are assholes and they're there for themselves and they're egotistical and they're narcissistic and they just want to rule the world for themselves no matter what cost. Yeah, absolutely, there are those people. But I have a hard time calling people toxic because even some of the guys right now in social media that are toxic masculines that a lot of people would say still say a lot of really good things and they still produce a lot of really good masculine energy. It just might be that there's this thing and this thing and this thing that is really off.
Let's dig into that a little bit, right? Because one of the other pillars is honor, which is kind of what you're talking about, right? Like it has to be an honorable use of power. It has to be an ethical use of power. And I think, at least in my opinion, I think the country is in a place of a lot of dishonorable people, right? I think we're a very hedonistic society. I think we're a very pleasure-seeking society. We're a very like short-term gain society. And if those are your values, you can't be honorable because honor is all about the long game. And it's all about, the collective good versus the individual good. So I'm curious for you, like, what do you think is happening? Because I do think our society is like degrading in many ways. We're getting away from these traditional values. And two, like, what do we do about it? How do you get honor and ethics and morality and spirituality back to the people?
It's a good question. And I'm not sure if this answer is going to answer your question, but I'm going to say it anyway. And then maybe if I don't, you can let me know. So this is a statement some people are going to initially disagree with. So pay attention. Here's the statement. I think all feminists, somebody that would call themselves a feminist, is really just wanting healthy masculine energy in their life. But what they've been taught or what society has taught them is that masculine energy is negative and chauvinistic and toxic and evil. So because of that, I think society, I shouldn't even say I think, this is just true. Society has told men to not live out their masculine energy. As a whole, that's the society we live in right now. The answer to, quote, toxic masculinity is more femininity in our society, which is the wrong answer. That's never worked throughout history. Read history. It's just never worked. You cannot fight toxic masculinity with femininity. It doesn't work. You fight toxic masculinity with healthy masculinity. That's how you fight it. So we have a whole society right now of men that are being told that they need to be more feminine when that's not naturally who they are. Again, some men are more feminine than others. That's fine. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying men are being taught that they need to increase their feminine energy and lower their masculine energy, and it's creating more problems. And it's creating more toxicity because of the fact that men are not living out their true selves. So what's ending up happening is that even though the basis of feminism, I agree with a lot of it, because the basis of it is have healthy feminine people, have healthy masculine people. Yeah, for sure. Let's do that. But what it's turned into is telling men not to live out their masculine energy. And by not living out their masculine energy, guess what? The only option they have is to become more toxic, to become more like Homer or to become more like Bill Burr's dad. And neither one of those are helping our society. So the answer is no, become more masculine, become more healthy in your masculinity. It's not become more feminine. That's not the answer. It clearly hasn't worked. If you think it's worked and you're watching this and you disagree with me right now, send me a message and tell me how it's worked in our world right now. Tell me how in politics, in religion, we have all these people abusing all these people at all times because of the fact that they've been told to be more feminine. Tell me how that's worked. I dare you, because it hasn't. It won't work.
I agree, right? Because I think that masculine energy comes out sideways anyway. Either it's like in the form of an addiction or a way of shutting down and dissociating, or in like those kind of more secret hidden abuses, right? All those things that have behind closed doors when a guy isn't being watched, right? So you can't clamp it down. You have to transform it and transmute it.
For sure, because there's plenty of things happening behind closed doors. And whatever's happening behind closed doors and in private is who you really are. So you can't pretend. You know, we live in a pretend society where people can pretend whatever they want on social media, online, etc. But it doesn't matter because it doesn't change who they are. What matters is what happens in private. What happens in private is who you really are. So if in private you're living out a very true, healthy, masculine life, it's going to come out in social media. It's going to come out in your everyday life. It just is. You can't hide it. And we also see a really big push right now in our culture, especially with politics and as of the time of this recording, the election just ended a couple weeks ago, et cetera. And people just being mad at everybody for whatever reason because they don't agree with them, which is all toxic. Let's not even call it toxic masculine. It's just toxic in general. But that's all coming out of insecurities of people not living out their true selves. Because if somebody was living out their true selves, they could have opinions and they can differ with somebody else's opinions and they would still be fine. And that's what I'm trying to do in my life. I definitely am far from there. I have plenty of mistakes. I fuck up often. I'm not saying I'm there, but I try my best to actually live out what I actually am inside so that I can be open to what other people believe, even if it's something completely different than what I believe.
So let me ask you this, right? We're doing the rallying cry for healthy masculinity, and I'm with you. So in your opinion, right, where should somebody start to get in touch with that healthy masculine? What is an action that one of our listeners can do right after listening to the show that can get that mobilized for them?
I mean, I think there's several things. So I'll mention a couple things. The first is I'll put in a plug for myself. If you want to reach out to me, I think Marc's going to put it in the show notes afterwards. But hit me up on Instagram. That's probably the best way to find me. The Derelict Podcast on Instagram. If you don't know how to spell derelict, look it up. If you don't know what derelict is, think of Zoolander. Derelict my balls. That's where it came from. It's called The Derelict Podcast. And here, do this. So if you send me the word Marc's name here, my lovely host. If you send me the word Marc in my DM on the Derelict Podcast, I'm happy to provide, first of all, a 30-minute free coaching call with you, and we can talk about anything that you want. We can talk about masculinity. We can talk about what it is that you're going on in your life, et cetera. I charge a good amount for my coaching, but I'm happy to do this for free, and I wanted to offer this to all of Marc's listeners because of the fact that I appreciate Marc and I appreciate the mission that he's on. I really do, man. Like, I'm glad that you're one of the few people that are out there that really care about men and having them grow. So that's one thing. The Derelict Podcast, send me the word Marc. Happy to set up a call with you to talk about these things. Another thing is be very, very intentional with what you put here. What are you watching? What are you reading? And what is that convincing you of? Because we all have propaganda coming into our head at all times in this world, and it's affecting us all more than we realize. I promise you it is, because every time they do a scientific study on this, people think that none of this stuff is affecting them, and it is. It's affecting you. It's affecting me. It's affecting Marc. It's affecting all of us. So be really cognizant of that. So here's a couple of things that I've done that have really helped me. Number one, read. There are plenty of actually healthy masculine men out there right now, even on social media. Find them. There's a lot of really good ones. If you want, again, send me a message on Instagram. I will send you some accounts that I think are really, really great. Obviously, follow Marc, follow me. We talk about this stuff all the time on our social media accounts, so follow us. But also send me a note, and I will send you some really, really popular guys right now that are really good in living out their masculine energy, and just watch what they say, because there's a lot of really good things to glean from them. I have several books as well. If you also want to, again, hit me up on Instagram or look at my website. There's a place on my website that has resources, and there's resources just for men. So there's men's books. So if you want to read those, I can tell you my favorite men's book, but I'm not going to do it right now. You have to send me a message. I'll tell you my favorite masculine book of all time. I'll tell you, Marc, after the show. Those are a couple things. One other thing that I've done just personally that has really helped me is I start adding these videos from healthy men on my YouTube to watch instead of my normal numbing out behavior that I do at night of just watching whatever sitcom or comedy or whatever else, is I start adding these and I'm start being intentional about just watching these. They don't always have to be to learn, because like at nighttime, I don't want to sit around and learn, to be honest. I'm just not a night guy like that. I'd rather do that in the morning. So I don't want to just sit around and learn, but a lot of these are just men just talking about how to be men. So I think those are very, very tangible ways. Somebody could get off this podcast immediately and go on to YouTube or go on to whatever platform you want and search for some of these guys, see what they're saying, and be okay if they have different religious or political beliefs than you, because masculinity transcends all that. They don't have to have the same beliefs as you. And it's really easy for me just to write somebody off because I'm like, they're whatever political party, they're whatever religion. It doesn't matter. It transcends all that. Are they a men having other men step up, but then also be honest and vulnerable with their failures, their struggles, their emotions, the stuff they're going through? Are they doing that while also encouraging men to step up and to be challenged?
I think that's really well said. I think masculinity is like a primal force. So yeah, like all the other stuff is kind of built on top of it. And I think open-mindedness is what's really needed today, out there in the world in the political spectrum, is like understanding people of different backgrounds instead of just continuing to silo and build echo chambers. So I really like that you said that. I want to ask you another question around challenge, right? Because I agree with you. I think men grow through challenge. The masculine is flourished through challenge, right? But a lot of guys come to me and they say, hey, how do I set the right level of challenge? How do I, because so many guys are telling me to do things that are maybe too hard for me, or maybe they're too easy and I feel patronized. I feel like it's just like baby mode. So how can a guy bring more challenge into his life? And I think more importantly, like the right level of challenge that they will grow through it.
That's such a great question, Mark, because I know I'll just speak personally for myself. I've gone through stages of my life where I challenge myself too much and then I shame myself over not accomplishing those challenges, right? Like I set a bar that's impossible for me to reach and then I fail. And then at the end of the year, I'm like, well, I hit 40% of my goals. That's like well worse than an F, right? So one thing that I would say is be really careful when you're goal setting. Most people think goal setting is a positive thing. A lot of the times I think it's actually really negative because it can be taken in a way of, well, like if I don't accomplish these things, I'm not a good human or I'm not living out my true self, etc. And that's just not true. It's just not. So be really careful the way that you do that. I would say for, again, myself, I think one of the best ways I've figured out how to do this, honestly, is with mentors and coaches and therapists. Those three categories of men that are in my life that have been through something that I've been through already, that can help me look either in the past or the present, the future, whatever, in order to figure out, like, am I lying to myself? Can I actually do these things? Do I have the ability to do these things, etc.? And then the other thing that's really helped me is to do things that motivate me. Whether that means that I'm watching these videos from these men that have like accomplished these really great things and that spurs this fire within me, right? That could be an example. I'll sometimes I have, a movie room downstairs at my house. And sometimes I'll just go on YouTube and just type in like warrior cry and just watch warrior cries from movies and just scream myself just to like feel masculine energy. Even I could be by myself. I just feel such masculine energy where I'm like, yeah, I'm ready to go conquer the world. Again, not in a bad way. I'm not going to go rape and pillage, but I'm going to actually go conquer the world with whatever I'm learning right now. So I would say that those are good things. I would also say I'd really encourage everybody, have a couple male friends in your life that want to do this also. So what I would encourage people is have a couple men in your life that want to do the same thing. If the men that you're surrounding yourself with in your life that you spend the most time with don't want to be challenged, they don't want to increase their confidence, they don't want to make it to the next level of their life, it's going to be harder for you to do it. It just is. Almost impossible. Almost impossible. There's a Harvard study several years ago. I've talked about this on my podcast before. You've probably heard of it as well, Mark, where they did a study of all these people, and they said that 90% of their success was the 5 people they surrounded themselves with the most. 90% of the success they had in life was just because of the 5 people they had that surrounded themselves. And The majority of that also, by the way, is your partner, the person you spend the most time with, if you have one. I don't have one. But for those that have one, that one person, that might not be a man, that might be a woman, that might be whoever, right? But those people are the ones that will help you get to that next level. So I just promise you, if you are surrounding yourselves with guys that are down here and okay being down here and you want to get up here, you're not going to do it if you keep surrounding yourself with those guys. Level up the people around you. And that's really hard, man, because that includes relationship transitions. That might include divorcing your spouse. It might include getting rid of your best friend and never talking to them again. I mean, it could be really extreme. It might not be. It might just be finding another place in their life. So I'll give you an example. A couple years ago, this happened to me. It's actually happened a couple times in the last couple years where I've had to do this with a couple friends. And I didn't just cut them out of my life, but I just realized like I can't spend this much time with them. I still love them. I still want to connect with them. I will still take their phone call, but I can't hang out with them every week because I don't want my life to be like their life is. I just don't. So I have to have enough respect and love and pride for myself to be like, okay, I need to separate myself more from that person. I still love them. Like we went to school together, whatever. Who cares? Just because you went to school together and you sat next to each other in math class doesn't mean you have to be friends forever. And it doesn't mean you have to hang out every single week if they're not where you want to go. Now, if you guys are on the journey together, go for it. That's the best. Those are the guys I look for. And those are the guys that I coach. So again, feel free to hit me up on Instagram. I'm happy to chat with you on the phone and tell you more specific ways of how I've done this. But I would say the majority of the success a man's going to have in this area of his life to move to the next level, to be challenged, and to continue to grow is going to be based on the people that he surrounds himself with, especially the top 5.
I think that's really true. And I think, 12-step in the rooms really helped me with that, of doing that friendship and relationship audits. And you have to, as you're going through the steps, have those hard conversations with people. But yeah, like you're the average of the 5 people that surround you. And that's like really humbling. And it is worth it for listeners, like to look at those people and just try to look at objectively, right? Like, is that who you want to be? What do they value? Are they bringing you up or taking you down? What's your relationship dynamic with them? Who's giving more, who's taking more? Like any kind of like objective kind of pulling back the camera is what I think a lot of men need instead of being caught in kind of the whirlwind.
Just real quick, Mark, what you said too, I think is really, really key and really good to point out to your listeners because I just want to make sure they didn't miss it. And that was look at those relationships objectively. That's really key here because this is not a situation to shame somebody. This is not a situation to have your ego get out of control and be like, well, I'm so much better than them. Because I've done that in the past. I've dropped relationships because I'm like, well, I'm better than them. That's not what we're talking about here. This is not a matter of being better. It's a matter of where are the people and where do they want to go? And does that match where you are and where you want to go? And again, the most difficult one, I think, to really be honest with yourself about is your spouse or your partner or your girlfriend or your boyfriend, the person, whoever the person is that you spend the most time with. Are they really going the same way you are? And if you can look at that objectively and after having conversations with them and everything else and figure out that they're not and that it's far off, you may need to end that relationship, which might be the most difficult thing you've ever done in your life. But don't end it until you can objectively look at it and have other people that you trust that can help you look at that as well. That's what I would encourage you. Maybe it's a therapist, maybe it's a coach. We're here for you too.
Yeah, so it actually dovetails into my final question as we're wrapping up here is, the book that you wrote, the ebook is about divorce, right? And about traps that men can fall into and about how to kind of like recover and build yourself back. So, a lot of our listeners are men that are either, contemplating divorce or have been recently divorced. Listeners, we hear you out there. So yeah, Josh, if you could just riff on that a little bit of, I guess, one, how do you know when to pull the trigger or if you should? And then two, okay, say like you're at ground zero, like how do you start to build back your life? Because I know that's rock bottom probably for most men out there.
Yeah, it was for me. When I went through my divorce, that was rock bottom for me as well. And it can be incredibly difficult. And the book actually talks about kind of so for people that are considering it, you haven't gone through the divorce yet, but you're considering it or you're realizing like maybe this is not the relationship. There's actually several helpful questions in that book to consider. Questions that maybe you can talk to your spouse about, questions that you need to ask yourself to, again, get in that objective state of like, okay, am I just acting out of emotion because they pissed me off or something? Or am I actually objectively seeing that we're so incredibly far off that we're just not wanting the same things out of life, etc. That's a really, really difficult process to go through. And frankly, I didn't do a very good job of it. My wife had to end it for it to end for us, honestly, because I wasn't able to just get to that point where I objectively was like, yeah, you're right. We just really are. That was really hard for me. So if you're listening and it's really hard for you and you think you might just stick around forever because you're faithful, you're loyal, etc., good for you. And also, man, chat with somebody. Do it objectively. Again, I think Marc's going to put a link to my ebook in the resources. But again, if you go to my Instagram, The Derelict Podcast, send me the word ebook and I'll send it to you for free. Or you can go in the resources and pay me for it. I'm happy with either way. But if you want it for free, go to Instagram, The Derelict Podcast, write ebook, and I'll send it to you for free because that's how passionate I am about this. Now, that being said, there's a lot of things to consider when you're going through the divorce, which we talk about in there. So the whole book is the 5 most common traps that men go through when facing divorce and how to overcome them. That's the purpose of the book. That is the title of the book. So I want to make sure that men get more time with their kids, that they spend less money on attorneys, courts, etc. when they're going through, and they get screwed less, frankly, because a lot of guys get screwed in divorce. They just do. So you might think, well, don't I just have an attorney for that? Yeah, but the attorney's not going to do that. The attorney's going to bill you, and the attorney's going to cost you a lot of money, and they might not help you with any of those things. They just want to get the thing off their plate. Trust me, I know. I'm multiple 6 figures into attorneys at this point, so I get it. That being said, your other question, which I think is even more important, and where I would say probably the majority of the coaching that I do with men is, now how do I put my life back together? And what does my life look like after this incredibly painful, difficult process? Even if your divorce was easy, it's incredibly difficult to figure out, how do I transition from this? Especially during the first 100 days. The first 100 days of that separation, that divorce, are critical because the things that people start doing during that time often become the habits that take years to unwind if you start doing that. So think one big red flag I'll just give to everybody is, do not date. Just don't date. Do not convince yourself that you're ready for dating, because you're not. You are not. I promise you. Oh, this person's different. Oh, I already did a lot of my work. Oh, I already went through. No, that's all bullshit. You're not ready. I promise you. I interviewed several people for this book when I was writing it, and I asked them what their top were because I wanted to make sure that they matched with the top 5 that I came up with. And of the couple dozen people that I interviewed that I know personally that have all gone through divorces and everything else, you know what the number one thing that everybody said was? They dated too soon. Every single one of them said that. And it didn't matter if they waited a day or if they waited a month or they waited a year. They all said the exact same thing. We started dating too soon. Now, why is that so critical? The only reason that's critical, there is no time frame. I don't give a time frame in the book. I give you ways of thinking about it. But the only reason that's so critical is because of the fact that during a transition like this, you got to give yourself some space to grieve, to feel your emotions, and to realize like what you actually want out of life. For myself, at least, I had so much wrapped up in my marriage. I thought my life would be over when the marriage was over. And I really had a hard time trying to figure out, well, what do I actually want out of my life? What's my mission now? When it's not this, and it's not this kind of cookie cutter, married with kids in the suburbs, living a good lifestyle, then what is it? What do I actually want out of my life? And what does that look like? If you're trying to figure that out and you have no clue, or maybe even a small clue, and you start dating somebody else, how well do you think that's going to work out? Because if you don't know, you don't even know how to express it to them. Therefore, they don't even know who they're dating. So I think the biggest reason people were like, slow down on dating is because you gotta know who you are first. You gotta be living in your authentic, true self first before you bring somebody else into that. It's unfair to you. It's unfair to them. It's unfair to everybody. It's just not gonna work well. Trust me, I've done it. This is only coming from personal experience. I've done it. I've watched people do it. It never works. I promise you.
I mean, that's very clear. And yeah, like if there's no vision, and if you're codependent, like we talked a little bit earlier, like you're just going to absorb whoever's other vision there is, and then you're back to the races, right?
Yeah, there's an old spiritual saying, right? Without vision, the people will perish. And I think that a lot of people going through divorce, like the 2 most common people I see that somebody meets with when they're going through divorce is an attorney and a therapist. And both of those are really, really key. Obviously, I'm talking with a therapist right now. Therapy is really key because dealing with trauma through that process, dealing with trauma from your childhood, dealing with the stuff you haven't dealt with because you've been pushing it aside this whole time, really, really key. An attorney, yeah, very key. Especially if you have a contentious divorce, you want to make sure that somebody is on your side, that you're not getting screwed in ways that you shouldn't be. But the thing that I see missing the most is a coach. And what a coach will give you is vision. What does your life look like after? What is this going to be like? How are you going to actually put your life in a way that is much better than it ever was, even if you thought you never could do that? So have somebody doing that for you, whether it's me or somebody else. Make sure that you have a coach in your life that is actually helping you get that vision so that you can get there a lot faster. Don't be like me. Like I struggled for years trying to figure out how to do that after my divorce. I didn't have that coach, that person. That's why I'm so passionate about doing it for other guys, because like have that vision, know where you're going. I'm good.
Right.
I'm done.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. Where can people find you online? What's the best way? I know you mentioned the Instagram, but yeah, one last pitch.
I'd say Instagram's probably the best. Just reach out to me at the Derelict Podcast on Instagram. If you want to watch, we have plenty of videos on YouTube. My podcast and shorts and everything are on YouTube as well. It's still the Derelict Podcast, so just search for it there. But reach out to me on Instagram. I still personally respond to every single message I received. It's not going to be a virtual assistant. It's not going to be one of my team members. There's plenty of people. I do it personally. And the reason I do is because I really care and I really want to interact with the people that are reaching out to me. So reach out to me on Instagram, the Derelict Podcast. Again, if you do the word Marc, happy to provide a free coaching session for you, a half-an-hour coaching session. And if you do the word ebook, I'm happy to send you the free ebook on the top traps to avoid when going through a divorce. So thanks again, Marc, and thanks for letting me plug my stuff. I appreciate you.
Great. Fantastic. And listeners, thank you so much for joining us. Do all the socials with us, like, share, subscribe. We're at Men's Therapy Online everywhere, all channels, menstherapy.online. Thank you again for tuning in, and we'll see you next week on another episode of the Men's Therapy Podcast.